something that'll change the world and human life as we know it.
He knows. He's seen the light.
When Monty talks, it's painful.
Monty, you have been so instrumental in kind of pointing me in the right direction.
It was about looking at your character defects in spirituality.
It's the integration of clinical practices with the 12 steps.
It's an absolute pleasure. He certainly knows a lot of people. He's got a lot of energy, and sometimes when you don't have so much energy, he picks you up and carries you.
Having the Monty man there certainly helps.
This is one of the places that is about the business of the solution.
The views expressed on this special broadcast of the Take 12 radio show do not necessarily reflect those of KHLT Recovery Broadcasting or its affiliates. KHLT is not affiliated with any particular 12-step fellowship.
Now here's that guy who's getting less popular minute by minute. Your host, the Multi-Man.
Well, greetings, one and all. Welcome aboard the Good Ship Recovery here at Take12Radio.com on your internet dial. Before I introduce you to our guest this week, I want to talk to you about a couple things really quick. As you know, Take 12 Radio and KHLT Recovery Broadcasting are behind the fundraising event for South Albany High School here in Lynn County, Oregon. As many of you know, South Albany's fire that took their cafeteria, it destroyed that. It destroyed their band room and like $600,000 worth of band equipment, all their choir equipment. The Child Development Center at the high school was burned to the ground. And this was all by the hand of an arson. And this happened several weeks ago. It made national news. And Dean, the drummer from Journey, donated $10,000. Other people have donated. Well, we're doing our part as well. And I want you to know that if you would like to donate, we have T-shirts for you. And they are located, if you go to the banner on take12radio.com, it says Paint the Town Red. That's the color, the main color for South Albany High School. Click on the banner. It'll take you to their Facebook page, and you can order your T-shirts there. It's your donation to the school gets you a T-shirt, and we would appreciate it very, very much. It was a horrific fire. And the fire attempted to destroy the future hopes and dreams of many, many people, but it did not succeed because we believe in rebel strength and rebel pride here at South Albany High School. That's our mascot, the Rebel, and we will not be shaken. And these kids are amazing kids. The staff and administration at South Albany is an amazing group of people. So if you'd like to join me in Take 12 Radio and supporting that, I'd appreciate it very much. Just click on the Paint the Town Red banner. The other thing is, this coming Wednesday, we're going to be talking about the promises associated with the 9th step. Now, you guys know that I have a bone to pick when I hear the promises read in meetings, because every step, well, with the exception of a couple of them, every step has promises. And when we read the promises like they're the promises of the entire program, we do the newcomer a grave injustice. It's very confusing. So we've been doing a show every Wednesday on The Great Reality, which airs on Wednesdays, that is lining up the promises of the individual steps and showing you what those are, the ones that are associated with those. And we are now at the 9th step promises. If we are painstaking about this phase of our recovery, these things come true. What phase? The amends phase. Not all the other stuff. And so we really want to welcome you and join us Wednesday. But here's a kind of a thing I'm requesting from some of you, and I've got a lot of submissions. Thank you so much. At the very top of take12radio.com, there's a banner. And it asks the question, have you ever tried to make an amends and it wasn't received? Click on that banner. It'll show you how you can type in your story. We'd love to hear from you. because we're going to be sharing some of those stories on next Wednesday's show, or this Wednesday's show, rather. So if you would do that, that would be awesome. Please do not use last names if you're referring to people that you try to make amends to. And in fact, we're not going to be using names, actually, just so you know. All right. Enough family housework done. I want to introduce you to our guest. Listen, folks, I get a lot of books. You know that. Many of you have sent me books, and we haven't gotten to you. I apologize for that. We try to get to everybody to at least tell you whether we're going to accept the book and help promote it on the show or not, or talk about it. And I have to tell you that there is just a ton of books out there on this issue of recovery and the steps that are not necessarily AA conference approved or NA conference approved, but are extremely helpful. And there's a whole bunch of them out there that are not helpful at all. And the majority of them I get really aren't helpful. Bless your heart, you guys. I thank you for your motivation and for your willingness to serve, but some of the stuff you guys write, this talk show host has got to say, I'm confused. But there's a book out right now by Mike D that does not fall in that category. It falls in the helpful category, and this is a phenomenal book. It is an easy read. It's short. This book is absolutely phenomenal. And you know me, I don't say that too often. I am going to be asking my sponsees to read this book when I get a brand new sponsee, not just before they do step 4, but before they do anything. This is right up there with, okay, read the first 164 pages. Well, my sponsees need to be reading this book, and we're going to be telling you how you can get a copy of that very soon. Well, I want to ask you this. Have you ever asked yourself, or maybe you have sponsees that have asked you this, will step 4 be painful for me? How can I get the willingness I need to do this step? Can I ever become rigorously honest? Really, can I? Can I ever be rid of resentments? Will my guilty feelings ever go away? What are my character defects? Why do we pray in AA? What is faith? What is spirituality? These are all questions many of us had. This book is called Letting God In. It's one alcoholic talking to another about AA's step 4. But I'm going to tell you, this is much more than about step 4, I discovered. This is an amazing book. I want to introduce you to my guest, Mike D., who is the author of this book. Mike, welcome to the show.
Thank you. It's great to be here.
You've done a phenomenal job. And when I see something like this, this well done, I can only, I credit it to your obedience to your Creator, but I also credit it to God, because the hand of God was obviously on you when you wrote this. I mean, this is so clear, so complete, and this is much more than just step 4. Isn't that the truth?
Yes, it is true. As I wrote the book, I think more things kept coming to me, and I kept every step leads to another, as you know. And I couldn't talk about step 4 without talking about step 5, and I couldn't talk about step 5 without talking about the steps that follow, because they're a complete process.
I love what you've done, because as you read this book, and I'm going to read a part of the foreword to the listeners, if I may.
Yeah.
As you read this book, it prepares you. In this book, it prepares you for looking at step 4, like you're going to be doing with your sponsor. You can't talk about doing something with your sponsor unless you have a clear understanding of what a sponsor's responsibility is. You cover that. You can't talk about working a 4th step unless you understand the preceding steps. You talk about that. It isn't just, well, this is how you do a 4th step. In fact, this isn't about how you do a 4th step. This is preparing you for the 4th step. Listen to this, folks. This is the forward, part of the forward. Have you ever sat in an AA step study meeting, hearing others talk about the results they've gotten from doing their 4-step inventory and felt encouraged to attempt your own, only to have that courage swept away later on by an overwhelming fear. Have you listened to others talk about their faith and their close, comfortable relationship with God and wished you could have that too? Have you found yourself wishing you could have the peace and serenity you see in so many others around you in AA? Have you almost begun to write an inventory, but never did? Have you started and stopped lots of written inventories? Do you have a few partially finished 4 steps stashed away in a drawer somewhere? Are you still trying to muster up the willingness to begin step 4 for the first time? Or perhaps you're thinking of beginning another one after several years of uncomfortable sobriety. Do you have certain questions about things like the big book, spirituality, prayer, faith, and God that you never really felt like you got satisfactory or clear answers to? Or maybe you just felt reluctant to ask. You sometimes question your own ability to be fully honest or willing. What a great, and that's just part of the foreword. But what great questions, because I think we've all had those. If we'd really be honest, and we lose a lot of people at step 4. True?
Oh, we lose a lot of people at step 4. Yes, we do, Monty.
Why do you think that is?
Well, I have over the years. I got sober in 1988, and after I did my 4-step, I got so almost became an evangelist for the 4-step, and I started doing a lot of 4-step workshops in my area around the state here. And one of the things that I came across with people, I had a lot of people who said they just didn't understand how to go about doing the 4-step, but the vast majority of them said that and some of them had been in recovery for several years, but they had not done a 4-step yet, and they were really struggling. And they would go to the workshops and to try to maybe get up the courage to do it. They said fear was what was stopping them. And I talked to a lot of people who had relapsed an awful lot of times before they finally got around to doing their 4-step.
Well, and isn't it interesting, the statement that we hear is fear stopped me from doing this, and yet this is one of the biggest things that we really approach head on is this topic of fear, right?
Yes, that fear was what I was trying to approach in the book the most, because but I learned that so many people had so much fear because they had so many questions. And that's where the book really came from.
Yeah. You say something that is so right on. You say that sitting around your 12-step support meetings, they talked about being in the program. You say, which I thought meant going to meetings on a frequent and regular basis. Don't you find that is a huge misconception today?
It's a very big misconception. It's something that really does a lot of damage, I think, because and I went through this myself. I had to figure out the distinction between being in the fellowship and being in the program. For a while, like many of us, I was just in the fellowship for a while, and for a while I thought that was what AA was. But thanks to the old-timers who were around in all the meetings I attended, I discovered that they were actually really working big steps, and I was seeing something in them that I wasn't seeing in myself, and I saw that they worked the steps and they got the results.
And you say that the program is something you do rather than a gathering of people in a place, which is the misconception that we have oftentimes. And I think I think we've caused that misconception because we've almost taught people to become meeting dependent instead of God dependent. True.
Exactly. That is absolutely true. How many times have we all heard meeting makers make it?
Oh, I hate that.
And there for a while, I was just a meeting maker. I went to sometimes 2 meetings a day because I was so desperate to stay sober, and I thought that was what was keeping me sober, or part of it, But
right.
Once again, if you go to enough meetings, you finally start to hear people say, "No, it was the steps that changed my life. It wasn't going to meetings." And how many times have we heard people say, "I'm having a bad day, I need a meeting"? Well, actually, when I'm having a bad day, I know I need to write an inventory.
Yeah,
So I need to do my 10 step,
I don't need to be sitting around listening about a bunch of people talk about their day.
Yeah.
Yeah. In chapter 1, I love the way you open up chapter 1, because the big book, Alcoholics Anonymous, is the foundation of everything we do in AA. And then you go on to say some more. What has happened? I mean, there are meetings today, Mike, where the big book isn't even welcome in the rooms. What is going on?
I do agree that a lot of the meetings that we might walk into around our various neighborhoods might deviate a little bit from the big book. I haven't found that in my area.
Mm-hmm.
I know that the big book is always the central point of the meeting, and they always read how it works, and most often the meeting, at least the meetings that I go to, the topic will be taken out of the big book, or it will be taken out of the 12 and 12.
Right. Well, and you're fortunate. And I've been to some of these meetings where they won't let you crack the book, and I don't get it. I'm kind of like, well, then this isn't an AA meeting. I mean, you could call it whatever you want to, but please don't say it's an AA meeting if you won't even allow the basic text of this fellowship that is called what we call the program, which is the literature. Then something else is going on, in my opinion. You make the statement, you talk in this book, and I'm kind of paraphrasing here, but you talk in this book, one of the things I really stuck out to me was you could read something over and over and over and over again, but that isn't going to get the job done, right?
Exactly. I don't know how many times I've heard people say, I've been reading the big book over and over and over again, and because I'm trying to get this program, and the message that I always try to convey every chance I get is to say, you can't get a spiritual awakening by reading the book, by reading the instructions. You have to actually take the actions.
In fact, share with the listeners the Swingset analogy that you have in the book.
Yes. I'm big on analogies, as you found out.
Yeah. And so what is the Swingset analogy for our listeners?
The Swingset analogy is that if you go to Walmart and buy a swing set and you take it out in your backyard and you take the instructions out of the box and you go in the house and read them for 3 months, no matter how many times you read those instructions, that swing set is not going to jump up out of the box and assemble itself. You actually have to go out with the tools and pick up the tools. You have to actually go out and do the work. And that's the message that I'm trying to convey in that chapter is that reading the instructions for the steps will not cause a spiritual awakening.
Yeah.
The only thing that causes a spiritual awakening is spiritual action.
So would you and I be so bold to say it is impossible to have a spiritual awakening as a result of steps you haven't done?
As a result of steps you haven't done?
Yeah, it's not possible to have a spiritual awakening as a result of steps you haven't done, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You have to take those spiritual actions to have that spiritual awakening. And that was my experience. I would I guess I would have loved it if it would have just if it was going to just take shape in my mind. But as many times as I read the book, nothing happened. I finally had to follow the instructions in the book, and I think we all finally come to see that what the big book is. What the big book actually is a set of instructions for how to have a spiritual awakening, and they tell us that in the book.
Yeah, you bet. All right, we're going to take our first break, and when we come back, I want to tackle what is an AA sponsor, because this is so vital. We come into these rooms where we hear, I don't know any other word to use, but garbage. Sometimes we hear things, take what you need and leave the rest. And I didn't know what I needed, so I just started picking and choosing. I didn't have any guidance. Nobody made the approach to me. I didn't have a sponsor for years. And there's a very important reason to have somebody walk through this process with you. And you lay it out, some qualifications of a sponsor, actually. Folks, when we come back, more with Mike D. The book is Letting God In. One alcoholic talks to another about AA's Step 4. Don't go away. Hey there, it's Monty Meyer from Take 12 Recovery Radio. Well, I'd like to take this opportunity to let you know about a brand new service being provided to those of you in the Willamette Valley and surrounding areas of Oregon. It's the ARS program, Addiction Recovery Services, being made available Tuesdays and Thursdays from 9 a.m. to 4 p.m. at Oak Creek Christian Center, located at 5775 Columbus Street Southeast in Albany, Oregon. If you or a loved one are living with addiction issues such as chemical dependency, alcoholism, opiate addiction, pornography, sexual addiction, eating disorders, or even codependency issues, we are here to help you. Here at ARS, we have resources available that you may not be aware of that can help you or your loved one recover from a seemingly hopeless state of mind and body. We offer experience, strength, and hope, as we have been there ourselves, and feel it imperative to assist you in obtaining the help you need to begin to experience the life you were meant to and created to enjoy. Well, perhaps you are not personally afflicted by any form of addiction, but you know and love someone who is. You've tried everything and feel at a loss as to what to do next to help. May I encourage you to pick up the phone today and call us here at 541-926-7981. You can call Monday through Thursday from 9 a.m. to 4 p.m. to schedule an appointment with our Addiction Resource and Support Department. You don't have to belong to a church or even believe in God to take the advantage of our services. All you need is a willingness to seek help. That number again, 541-926-7981. That's 541-926-7981 to schedule an appointment. We look forward to hearing from you, and remember, you don't have to go through this alone.
Free by the Sea is a drug and alcohol recovery center located in beautiful Ocean Park, Washington. This facility is amazingly gorgeous, but what's even more amazing is the integrity of the staff and the treatment provided for those wishing to recover from narcotic and alcohol addiction. The folks at Free by the Sea have a passion for presenting the solution to addiction for you or your loved one. To speak with an admission specialist, visit freebythesea.com or call toll-free 800-272-9199. This place is simply amazing.
Well, welcome back, my friends. Thank you for tuning in to this week's show here at Take12Radio.com on your internet dial. Mike D. Is my guest. He's the author of Letting God In, One Alcoholic Talks to Another About AA's Fourth Step. His website is mikedauthor.blogspot.com. You can also follow the links here on Friday's page. Just click on that and it'll take you to his page. Mike, can they get the book at that website?
The book is actually available through Amazon.com.
Okay, Amazon.com. So we'll have a link up for that, too, directly to Amazon, to your page there, so they can pick up a copy of this book. All right. Folks, I want you to understand, out there by now, those of you who've been listening to me for the last 10 plus years, that I'm very opinionated. I'm overly opinionated many a times, and I can be a little hardcore. And I don't apologize for that, because people are dying out there. But I got to tell you, if I were to write this book, I wouldn't be as kind as Mike. So it's probably a good idea that I don't write a book like this. Mike, God has really guided you in a very tactful way to help bring this across, so it's very palatable, but you don't mess around either. And one of the things that I appreciate in here, that a lot of people are hesitant to even say, is that you line out some qualifications of what a sponsor should be like. And I think it's important that our sponsors, and if we are sponsors, that we are, if at the very least, developing these kind of character qualities. One of the things you say about a sponsor, they should be a regular attender at AA meetings, that they should be positive and generally want to help other people. This has got to be a passion. We just, people say we'll never say no to a service position. Well, I say, yeah, you better learn how to say no, because you may not be qualified, right?
That's true.
And so a sponsor is so important. Yeah, I know they didn't call them sponsors back in the day, but they talk about accountability. They talk about working with each other. There's a whole chapter called Working with Others. Call it what you want to, but when you're working with somebody through these steps, you better have had a spiritual awakening as a result of the steps that you've worked as well. Don't you think, Mike? That's
what I was looking for when I picked my sponsor.
Right. And don't you think there's a lot of people out there teaching, you can sponsor somebody just as long as you're one step ahead of them. Have you ever heard that?
Well, yes, as long as you've been sober a little bit longer than somebody else. There's a train of thought out there that if you've been sober for a year, maybe you should be sponsoring people, But in that year's time, you may not have worked the steps. And if I'm looking for a sponsor, who's going to take me through the steps, that's what I want him to do. I'm looking for somebody who has already worked the steps.
Yeah.
And knows how to navigate those waters, and somebody who can really lead me. And, I can't lead you through a place I've never been. So, as soon as I had worked the steps, and I worked the steps, inside that first year of my sobriety, as soon as I had worked those steps, I knew that I could lead somebody else through those same steps because I'd done it myself. And,
right.
And it was God who put a guy in my life, and he came to me just as desperate as I was, and he asked me if I'd help him, and I said, yes, I will. But I said, here's what we're going to do. The first thing that I always tell him is, I'm not going to be your best buddy.
Yeah.
Some days you're going to walk out of my house and you're not going to like me.
Ain't that the truth?
That's the truth.
Yeah, you bet.
Some days I'm not your best friend, but in the long run I am.
I always tell people, if you really want to find out your character defects, sponsor someone.
Yeah. They'll come to the surface, won't they?
Yeah, they sure will. And again, let me congratulate you on how you prepare us for this fourth step. You just don't say, this is how we do a fourth step. As I read, I was like, when am I going to get to the fourth step? But then I realized how important all these other chapters were in here. And you go through them relatively quickly. Folks, you can sit down and read this book very quickly. I would suggest sitting down with your new sponsee and reading it together. Definitely you should read it before they do. But reading it together, I promise you, you will be blessed by this. It is really, really going to help. You make a distinction between willingness and desire. You say if you think willingness is a desire to do something then the answer is no. You'll never be able to get it. Explain that.
Exactly. Sometimes what we're when we're at step 3 and we know that step 4 is looming on the horizon, and we wait until we say, well, I have to be ready for my 4th step. I have to be ready. I have to be ready to do that. Maybe I have to be sober a certain amount of time. I know that there are people who say, well, you shouldn't do your 4th step too soon. Well, I'd say, why wait?
Me too.
If you've done step 3, you're ready to do step 4. And sometimes when we wait around to do step 4, what we're really, and even pray for God to help us with this, what we're really asking for is we're asking for the desire to do it. Make me want to do this thing,
Mm-hmm.
And I tell you, I tell people, if you're waiting around for the desire to materialize within you, it's probably not going to happen. Willingness and desire are not the same thing.
Yeah.
If you are willing to do it, you'll do it.
Yeah, whether you want to or not.
Wanting to do it has nothing to do with it.
Yeah. There you go. There you go.
I know a long time ago that willingness is something that I can't. I think it came from God, because I really didn't desire to do my 4th step when I did it. I didn't really want to do it, but I just did it because I knew if I didn't, I was going to relapse.
Yeah. Yeah, it puts a whole new light on the bumper sticker. Just do it.
Just do it.
Just do it. I talk with people that are being sponsored all the time to say, my sponsor says I can take as long as I want to do this step. And I'm like, okay, well, are you going by the basic text of this program that lays out this program? They say yes. Okay, well, let's look at the end of step 3. At the beginning of step 4, it says, next we launched. It's an Air Force term. It means 0 to 200 in a matter of seconds.
Yeah.
So if we're going to follow the directions, it demands that we go from step 3 to step 4 right now.
Right now.
Yeah.
The big book, I've yet to find the place where it tells us to wait.
Yeah.
Do a step. I've yet to find that spot in the big book, that page, that paragraph that says, now hang on, take it easy, let's wait, let's not rush. What it always says is, let's do this immediately. Let's do this right now.
You state something here that boy, I'll tell you, there was a biblical a reference to this. It just popped out at me when I first read this. You're talking about your sponsor. It says your sponsor understood the principle that the only way you can get the willingness to do bigger things later on is by doing smaller things now. And I was thinking about that. God's going to entrust you with the small things first before he entrusts you with the larger.
Exactly. That's always the way it works.
Yeah.
And you probably remember that little story I told about the guy who wanted to change sponsors, and he said, my sponsor in the group I'm in, he wants me to wear a tie, and I don't want him to sponsor me anymore because he wants me to wear a tie. And I said, actually, your sponsor, if you can become willing to wear a tie right now, and I said, I know that ties don't have anything to do with getting sober, but what he's trying to do is he's trying to prepare you for the next thing he's going to ask you to do. Because if you're willing to wear a tie right now, you might be willing to do the next thing he's going to ask you to do.
Well, and and some people say, well, are you willing to go to any length? That means mowing my lawn and washing my car on weekends, and that's not what we're talking about.
No, that's absolutely not what we're talking about.
That's abuse.
That would definitely fall into the category of abuse.
Yeah, yeah. You are even so bold to address prayer, and I love what you say. I say so bold because so many people don't want to. I love what you say about people that have experienced the power of prayer. You say if prayer didn't work for them, you wouldn't be hearing anything about it.
That's right.
And isn't that the truth? I mean, even people that don't claim to believe in deity, a deity as God, even they will talk about prayer. So I'm like,
yes.
If they're talking about it, how much more should we who believe in a higher power, in our Creator, in God Almighty, should we be talking about it? God wants, one of the things I heard years ago, it just made me sad, but it convicted my heart, and it changed my approach to prayer. I had a pastor friend of mine saying, you know what? I think it's very possible that the good Lord, is sitting on his throne and saying, man, Monty, I really miss my time with you.
Yes.
And I think that's true. And I think we need to engage. I mean, God loves us to engage him.
He wants us to develop a relationship with him. He loves us. We're his children. And, I have children, and I want a relationship with all my children because I love them.
Yeah.
And, I know that God wants that relationship with me. And I started praying really before I came into AA because I was just so darn desperate. I just prayed,
Right.
And God answered that prayer right away. And I knew that he was, I always knew that God was real. But I did not believe, when I prayed that prayer, I didn't believe he would answer that prayer because I had just lived way too wrong for way too long. And I just believed that God didn't love me, that he was not very pleased with me. Well, he proved to me that I was wrong. And I'll tell you this, Bonnie, the more I've prayed in my life, the more I've proved myself wrong in so many ways. In what I thought about God, what I thought I understood about God, and I realized I understand so little.
Yeah, I know. And it's okay. It's okay that, some people say that it's like you were saying, we're waiting for lightning, basically, we're waiting for the desire to come. Some people say, well, until I'm convinced God loves me, I'm not going to communicate with him. And I think, wow, you're cheating yourself. He is so gracious. One of the things that I want to talk about, here is that you really are a firm believer that without prayer, you can't accomplish these steps, particularly step 4, right?
Yes, I always taught my sponsorees, I always have taught my sponsorees to pray their way through the steps, through step 4 especially. The big book talks about it, as we see in the instructions for how to do step 4. I started praying because I found out it worked.
Yeah.
It was before I even had a relationship with God, and I've always tried to encourage the guys that I sponsor to start developing a relationship with God, because he's the foundation of everything we're doing here, and I don't want you to be dependent upon me. I want to teach you how to be dependent upon God.
I think one of the grave injustices we do with people we work with is to allow them to become dependent on us or dependent on the meetings. And I'm going to go so far, Mike, as to say even dependent on the steps. The steps are there to show us our need for a power, but they're not the power.
They're not the power.
Yeah. And
they're a pathway to the power.
Pathway to the power. But people become even step dependent. I hear it all the time. Well, I've been working on my character defects for 5 years, and well, first of all, you're not supposed to be doing that. That's supposed to be God's job. So that's yeah.
If you're working on your character defects, it's kind of like working on your drinking.
Yeah.
Going to succeed.
Yeah, how'd that work for you? So is step 4 painful?
Step 4 is painful to my ego.
Ah.
That's where the pain comes from. And as I work my way through step 4, maybe I don't even know I'm doing this, but what I'm doing is I'm in the process of humbling myself before God and humankind.
Yeah.
And there's going to be some things that I'm going to have to think about and write down that might be a little bit uncomfortable, but you know what? That discomfort isn't going to last long, and it's only hurting my ego. And I found out that the more open I became in my fourth step, and honesty was a big thing for me. I made a firm decision that I was going to be honest, and I was going to write it down no matter what. And that honesty led to an openness that I hadn't experienced, because I started to see things in myself that I didn't know. And so there's a lot of inner work that goes on in that four-step inventory.
You say honesty is our personal response to truth.
Yes.
Yeah, I've never heard it said any better than that. That's great. But here we go. Here we go with some of the folks that we know that you and I have probably experienced in our journey. What is truth? And as soon as somebody says that, I think, oh boy, here we go.
Yeah. Be like being a can of worms, but I think I laid it out as I did it as well as I could to lay out that there is objective truth out there.
Yes.
And it's not truth. See, I used to think that truth was my perception of things. There's such a thing as my truth and your truth and his truth and her truth. Well, I found out there's an actual objective truth out there. And I learned that in my fourth step.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And I told somebody one day I was a little irritated because they said something like that. They were saying, well, my reality may not be your reality. I said, okay, well, then please don't get irritated with me when I go slash your tires, because my reality says that's okay.
Yeah.
And they kind of put them in their place. And of course, me and my ego, I was pretty proud of myself. I love what you said. What's that?
I definitely understand that.
Yeah. I love what you say about the hallmark of our obsession. I'm going to read this, folks. This is in chapter 6 on honesty and truth. Mike says, nearly everyone understands how an obsession to drink destroys the human body, but I think only a real alcoholic can know how it destroys the human mind and spirit. One of the most deadly characteristics of our disease is that in our alcoholic sickness, we have lost the ability to differentiate between the true and the false. The fact that we can no longer distinguish reality from non-reality, our right from wrong, our good from bad, is the hallmark of the fatal obsession that has been holding us captive for so long.
Yes.
Yeah.
And that's something that I learned in the process of doing my fifth step. Is my sponsor in my fifth step helped me a great deal with this too. That I had lost the ability. I had actually lost the ability to be able to distinguish what was true and what was false, and what was right and what was wrong, and what was good and what was bad. And I had a lot of things really mixed up in my alcoholic mind. But that's what God does for us. He restores us to sanity, and that's what the steps say that He will do if we just participate with Him and cooperate with Him in this.
You say there's two problems going on here. We have a twofold problem. You say the first one is that we are dying, and we can't do anything about it. And then you say the second problem that Bill explains, Bill W., to us, is that we have an obstacle inside ourselves that is effectively blocking God out, the very one that can do something about it. That's quite the predicament. And we read in a couple of places in the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous there's one place in an introduction that says, in a foreword that says, the purpose of this book is to explain precisely how we have recovered. And another place is basically, the purpose of this book is developing a relationship with God. But we sidestep that.
Yeah, we do. We sometimes sidestep a lot of things that are in the big book.
You bet. Why are people... Okay, let me ask you this. Why do people love Jesus but hate church?
Maybe it's because church seems to have rules.
Yeah.
I don't know.
But I mean, okay, so I'm going to, and I've shared this on the show not too long ago. I'm going to share it again because I love this. But I was talking to a guy, Mike, not long ago that said, I hate organized religion. I said, okay, what is it you hate about it? He said, well, a guy stands behind a pulpit and tells you how to live, like he knows everything. And then he holds up a book and he says, this is the only way to do it. Then they ask for money. And I don't like all the pomp and circumstance, and they light candles, and they, do this and that and the other thing. It's very political. And I said, well, that describes the average AA meeting.
There's some similarities there.
So what I'm finding is that people, we hear the thing, oh, it's a spiritual program, not a religious one, and all that kind of thing, by people that really don't know the true definition of the word religion anyway. And I get it. I understand why they're confused. But we've got to be open to change the way we think, even about religious principles, right?
Yes, I think we do. I think we need to be open. In the big book, in the 12 and 12 as well, really encourage us to keep an open mind when it comes to religious people and what religious people have to teach us. And they make it very clear that they do have a lot to teach us.
Yeah.
And I'm a believer that you can practice your spirituality very religiously, and you can practice your religion very spiritually.
Well put. Well put. I like that a lot. Okay, listen, we're going to take our last break. Folks, don't go away. More with my guest this week, Mike D. He's the author of this book we've been talking about, Letting God In. One alcoholic talks to another about AA's fourth step. His website, mikedauthor.blogspot.com. You can pick up a copy of this book at amazon.com or follow the links here on Friday's page. Don't go away. We'll be right back.
I had this illness that really made me powerless over alcohol and that insisted that I got drunk. And so I got drunk. It doesn't have anything to do with trying to control it. An alcoholic who picks up the first drink will pick up the second drink. I can't say to anyone, no, don't drink. But I can say that when you decide you don't want to drink, come to AA. The door to AA is always open. Alcoholics Anonymous. It works. Look us up. Check your phone book, newspaper, or AA.org.
Men, women, and their families experience tremendous pain and suffering due to the struggles they face from substance abuse and its co-occurring mental health challenges. They need to find a safe place for peace and healing. The Rabia Addiction Healing Center was born out of a deep desire to provide that safe and powerful healing environment. The Rabia exists to help people recover from addictions by developing and maintaining healthy, meaningful relationships with God, self, and others. To speak with an addiction specialist, call 1-855-652-4325. That's 1-855-652-4325. Or visit our website at www.therapia.net. Therapia Addiction Healing Center, restoring lives one step at a time.
As men and women who have recovered from utterly hopeless states of addiction ourselves, we know all too well what it's like to battle addiction daily. We are Origins Recovery Centers. Here at Origins, we have taken that which we have learned along the way, excised anything unhelpful and unnecessary, infused it with the latest medical research and innovative therapeutic methods, and created what we know to be the absolute gold standard in substance abuse treatment. And Origins provides the most preeminent aftercare and relapse prevention program available in the United States. For a free confidential clinical assessment, call toll-free 888-843-8935. That's 888-843-8935. Origins, delivering real solutions for real families.
Hello, is there anybody in there? Just not if you can hear me.
All right, wake up, everybody. Anybody in there? Hello. Welcome back.
Come on,
Take12radio.com is our main website, and you can email us here at take12radio@comcast.net. My guest is Mike D., author of Letting God In. One alcoholic talks to another about AA's fourth step. And I love that because we know, we talk about nothing is so effective as one alcoholic helping another. That's providing, and that's assuming that the one who's working with the other one has a solution. Not everybody in the fellowship has a solution or has experienced it, right, Mike?
That's true. And I think we all eventually find that out when we talk to people.
There's some things we have to do, and I love this because you've been preparing us here, but you don't leave us with the problem. You talk about things that we have to do. In chapter 9 in the book, listeners, Mike says, first, we must honestly see our wrongs. Second, we must openly admit our wrongs. And third, we must willingly correct our wrongs. And you spend some good time on this thing. This is a program of action, not a program of sitting on our laurels and our blessed assurance, hoping that, the coffee is going to keep us sober today. It also doesn't sober you up if you've been drinking either, by the way, listeners.
I think many of us have learned that the coffee won't keep us sober.
Yeah. Especially the bad coffee around this part of the woods. You talk about being certain about God. Can you explain that a little bit?
Yes. I'll do the best I can here.
Okay.
I always believed that there is a God, but I lived my life in fear because this world seems so uncertain, and I just was really I walked around scared of life. I was always worried about what's the next terrible thing that's going to happen to me. And I lived a miserable existence when I was before recovery. And through recovery, through working these steps, I gained a realization of God that I hadn't had before. And my fears of life and what was going to happen next went away. The more I developed my relationship with God, I started to place my certainty in God and not in myself anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And everything in the world just became a wonderful place to be. I started loving living life, and that's a great leap from someone who, at one point in my life, wanted to commit suicide, and just knew that was probably what was going to happen with me. And I developed what I call a knowing faith, not that just believing faith, but it's
right.
Kind of like a little story I tell when I'd always heard in school that there was such a thing as the Rocky Mountain Range. Well, I live in Iowa, and I'd never seen a mountain in my life. But one time, my family went out to California in the car, and we went through the Rocky Mountain Range. And once I saw the Rocky Mountains, I stopped believing that there was Rocky Mountains, and I started knowing that there was. And that was kind of what happened to me. And as I worked the steps, I stopped believing and started knowing God.
Wow!
And I began to be able to trust Him and know that I could put my entire life and my whole will completely in His hands, and I was going to be all right. Because when I had my life in my hands, I was scared all the time.
Yeah.
And so that was something that was just another benefit of what happened to me when I got through the steps. I felt like I knew God.
Yeah, and I had that same experience. I'd been to Bible college. I was a youth pastor. I was an associate minister, and I didn't know God, Mike.
Yes.
And all that working for the Lord was all done on my own power. And until I went through the step process, I didn't know how to do it any other way.
Exactly. I know exactly what you mean.
Yeah. Now, we're getting close to running out of time, and I wish we didn't, because we're really only about halfway. We're a little over halfway through here. But one of the things that I just thought was so great, we're being about 3/4 of the way through the book. You've been preparing us for getting started, the 4th step.
Yeah.
And you've done an excellent job. And I think what this is about is counting the costs, which is something we don't do so often. And in this book, you've done that. You've paved a way. You've paved a road. You've made clear the path. So now we can move into understanding what doing a 4th step is all about. One of the things that you suggest in here that I absolutely adore, I just do, is that you recommend that when we're at this 4th step, that we open up to 12 and 12 and use that along with our 4th step. And I could not agree more. Now, listeners, don't misunderstand. The 12 and 12 is not a book of instructions on how to work the steps. But particularly in the 4th step, when we're talking in the big book about our instincts, the 12 and 12 does a very good job of explaining what that's all about, right, Mike?
That's what really opened the doors for me. When I understood my basic instincts of life, my basic human instincts, and that I was basically, when we're living by our instincts, we're basically living like an animal, because that's how an animal lives.
Yeah.
They just run on instinct. And that's how I was for so many years.
And you give us a real clear outline here on how to approach this thing. And so many, listen, if you're thinking about sponsoring somebody, folks, you've done these steps, you've had a spiritual awakening as a result of these steps, and now you want to pass this on. Because really, if you look in the book, it talks about what is our job now. It's to be of maximum service to God and our fellows. And this is one way we do that. But you're not quite sure how to explain this process and what sponsorship is about and the 4th step and everything. Please get this book. This is such a wonderful assist for you. I promise you. The website, again, is mikedauthor.blogspot.com. You can click there and click on the Amazon link at take12radio.com. It'll take you where you can get the book. You say, Mike, that willingness will disappear if you slow down the step process, right?
That's always true.
Yeah.
If you stop too long, you will find that what you were willing to do yesterday, you won't be willing to do today.
And I love what you do, because you just don't leave us at step 4. You're talking about what do we do now with it. And we need to propel ourselves forward into the 5th step and on.
Right. The main message is keep going. Don't stop. Whatever you do, don't stop.
Yeah.
Keep going.
Go ahead. What were we going to say?
I was just going to say, just keep going, and you'll get the promises that you love to hear read in those meetings all the time.
Yeah. Yeah, if you're wondering why your fear of economic insecurity hasn't left you, well, maybe you haven't made amends to your creditors yet. I mean, I remember sneaking out the back. Mike, I cut a hole in the chain link fence in my townhouse so I didn't have to face the landlord when he came calling for the rent. I'd sneak out the back and jump in my car and drive away. Aren't I grateful those days are gone?
We've all done some crazy things.
Yeah. Oh, my goodness. I love something that you do that is kind of akin to the big book, too. In the back of the big book, we have a spiritual appendix. You kind of do that, too. In chapter 19, you talk about spirituality. What is it? And I think a lot of people would really benefit from reading this. You say, to put it in the simplest terms, spirituality is purely a matter of living according to higher principles rather than our lower instincts.
Yes.
How'd you get so smart?
If only you knew me.
I love that. And then you don't leave us there either. You get us one more time. And I love that. In the chapter, which is a paragraph in one sentence, it's your turn. You encourage people to pass this on. Isn't that an important thing to do as we reach out to help our fellow human being?
Yes.
You've done an awesome job with this, brother. I'm just so impressed. Thank you so much. Do you have anything coming up? Are you going to be working on more literature?
I've got a third book coming out this year, and it's going to be on. The title of it will be Basic Prayer and Simple Meditation.
Oh, great. I can't wait.
And I also wanted to say that, yes, you can get my book through Amazon, but anybody who walks into their favorite local bookstore, if they don't have it on the shelf yet, all you got to do is walk up to the counter and order it. Any bookstore can get my book.
And you have a couple other books too, right?
I have another. My first book was written back in 1998, and that book is still going strong. That book is the title of it is The Healing Rosary, and it's a devotional, and it's meditations on the healings from the New Testament, and it's a book that somebody can use with or without the Rosary. I have used the Rosary because it helps me meditate. So
I just really am impressed. Mike D has been my guest. He is the author of Letting God In. One alcoholic talks to another about AA's fourth step. His website is mikedauthor.blogspot.com. You can follow him there. You got a Facebook page too, right, Mike?
Yes, I'm on Facebook.
Okay, so Mike's on Facebook, and he's one of my friends. You can follow him through that if you like. Mike, any closing thoughts?
My closing thoughts would have to be that I hope that nobody has to relapse another time. Before they finally pick up that big book and start reading the instructions and just start taking the actions. The actions don't hurt. Alcoholism hurts.
Yeah.
The actions never hurt me. They healed me, and they heal us all.
Yeah.
And I just hope that if this is your second or third or fourth time go around in AA, I hope that pick up this book, because I'd like to encourage you to just take these simple actions, and they're going to change your life, because they changed mine.
Amen. And if you're a listener out there and you happen to be from the Albany area and you're thinking about asking me to be your sponsor, or if I make the approach to you, that's what I tend to do, is make the approach. You're going to be seeing me packing around this book, Letting God In. Just a fair warning. I think it's awesome. Mike, thank you so much for your service and your commitment to God and your fellows.
Well, you're welcome, but thank you for having me on your show. It was just fabulous.
Absolutely, Mike. All right, Mike, don't hang up. Stay with me as we close out the show. Folks, don't forget, Mike D. Author at blogspot.com. Until our next broadcast, this is the Monty Man along with Mike. We're wishing God's perfect serenity for you. Bye-bye now.
This has been a broadcast of KHLT Recovery Broadcasting.
Kitty, 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 kitty.